Inductees, you may blow out your candles and be seated. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming here tonight to honor these students with us. For those of you who do not know me, I am Mike Fording, the new principal of Brush High School. It is always great to see our students shine with success. These students are being recognized based on their hard work, leadership, community service, and character. I can think of no better qualities or traits I would want to represent us here at Brush High School. Students, it is your determination and drive that has got you to this point. You are being recognized because of everything you've done up to this point in life. Life is not always easy, but your qualities and character will help you achieve all that you want in this life. Students, thank you for being the type of student and people we are proud to call Brush Arcs. You not only represent what we are about in the classroom, but you represent all that is good in this world. Keep up the amazing work. I want to thank the community, the families, parents, board members, and mostly the students for coming out tonight. You deserve this honor. At this time, I would like to introduce Ms. Stacy Bram, co-advisor of the National Honor Society. Thank you.
Good evening. In 1921, the National Association of Secondary School Principals officially established the National Honor Society. Though many local and regional honor societies existed prior to 1921, no nationwide organization had been founded. Under the leadership of Dr. Edward Reinerson, principal of Fifth Avenue High School in Pittsburgh, the organization grew from the original Alpha chapter to more than 1,000 chapters in just 9 years. Today, there are chapters in all 50 states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and Canada. According to the national organization's goals, N.H.S. hopes to recognize and encourage academic achievement while developing other characteristics essential to citizens in a democracy. Our Constitution outlines 4 main purposes which have guided chapters of N.H.S. from the beginning: to create enthusiasm for scholarship, to stimulate a desire to render service, to promote leadership, and to develop character in the students of secondary schools. These purposes translate into the criteria used for membership selection in each local chapter. Tonight, we are pleased to welcome 9 young people who have met these criteria. They are a tribute to Brush High School and to you, the parents, teachers, counselors, and administrators who have guided them in their journey toward excellence. I would now like to introduce N.H.S. President Giovanni Tripi.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. I want to take this time to welcome everybody to the 2022 National Honor Society Induction Ceremony. Today is such a special day. We get to honor the honor of welcoming astonishingly talented students to the National Honor Society. Today, we are recognizing these students' remarkable achievements in academics, service, leadership, and character. Our officers, starting with Madeline Pugh, who is our vice president, will now describe the 4 pillars of the Honor Society.
The first branch of National Honor Society is scholarship. The inductees beyond me have all achieved a grade point average of 3.5. But, even more importantly, they embody a commitment to learning. The pursuit of knowledge doesn't end at the classroom doors, and the Brush N.H.S. inductees have learned that knowledge can be acquired only through diligence and effort. Learning furnishes the lamp by which we read the past and the light which illuminates the future. Candidates have the charge to continually expand their world through opportunities inherent in scholarship. N.H.S. Secretary Emily Loya will now present leadership.
The leaders at Brush High School exert a wholesome influence on the school. In taking the initiative in class and in school activities, the real leader strives to train and aid others to attain the same objective. The price of leadership is sacrifice, the willingness to yield one's personal interests for the interests of others. A leader has self-confidence and will go forward when others hesitate. No matter what power and resources may exist in a country or school, they are ineffectual without the guidance of a wise leader. Leadership is always needed. Thus, to lead is a substantive charge to each of our members. N.H.S. Treasurer Sujing Chen will now present character.
Character is the force within each individual which distinguishes that person from others. It gives each of us our individuality. But when we talk about characters for the students of National Honor Society, the words mean so much more than that. Implicit in the terms of ethic or moral nature of an individual, that product of constant action, striving daily to make the right choices, we must be, then, in reality, what we wish to appear to others. By demonstrating such qualities as respect, responsibility, trustworthiness, fairness, caring, and citizenship, we may hope to prove by example that we value character. Khalia Dogan, Parliamentarian, will now present service.
Service can be described in various ways. In the routine of the day's work, many opportunities arise to help others. Willingness to work for the benefit of those in need without monetary compensation or recognition is the quality we seek in our membership. We are committed to the idea of volunteering our time and our abilities to the creation of a better tomorrow.
Good evening. I'm Jill Stranick, co-advisor of N.H.S. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker tonight. Our speaker is someone who cannot, when faced with a difficult challenge at work, simply throw up his hands and exclaim, "It's not rocket science." Scott Karn is a mission design engineer with the Mission Architecture and Analysis branch at NASA Glenn Research Center. In his work, he supports orbital trajectory design and optimization activities for NASA's Gateway Lunar Outpost and the vehicle's power and propulsion element. I had to look this up. Gateway is the first ever lunar space station. Pretty cool stuff. Mr. Karn has previously supported a wide range of work for NASA and its partners, including a study on pilot, breathing, and high-performance aircraft, commercial and academic research on board the International Space Station, and microgravity combustion research. He is a Case Western Reserve University graduate with both a master's and a bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering. He's a proud 2014 graduate of Brush High School, and while at Brush, Mr. Karn was a member of the robotics club, the swim team, the National Honor Society, and the percussion section of the marching band. His sisters and mom are also Brush graduates. I'm pleased to welcome Scott Karn.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you to Mrs. Stranick for that very kind introduction. I'm very honored to be here tonight and to have this privilege of speaking to all of you. I feel very old to say that it's been 8 years since I was on that stage, and quite a lot has happened since then. I graduated from Brush, I went to college, I earned a bachelor's and a master's degree with a lot of difficulty, and then I got a job. And for the last 2 years, I have worked on the Artemis program, NASA's mission to return to the moon. But before any of that, I was here, sitting in the PAC, being inducted as a member of the National Honor Society. I hope that you are all proud to be here tonight. I know that I was back in my day. And being a member of the National Honor Society is an achievement that you should be proud of. Your teachers have recognized the 9 of you as the very best that Brush has to offer. I only had a few minutes to speak to you all before the ceremony, but I can guess at your list of achievements. I would bet that you are outstanding students, dedicated athletes, talented artists and musicians. I'd also bet that you are leaders amongst your peers, whether it be in the classroom, in clubs, in band, or in sports. Sitting here tonight is also proof that you have excelled in the face of a global pandemic. I'm sure that none of you expected to spend so much of high school on a video call. I know that I did not expect to spend 2 years working from my living room wearing sweatpants. But despite the added challenges and stresses of the pandemic, you have succeeded, and that alone is worthy of recognition. I remember applying for the National Honor Society, making sure that I hit all 4 pillars. I was confident that my grades reflected my scholarship. I listed all of the community service that I could think of and anything that I thought would demonstrate leadership. And I remember hunting down a recommendation that I hoped would speak to my character. I can't, however, remember who spoke at my induction. Maybe they weren't very interesting, or more likely I just wasn't very good at paying attention. But I hope that I can leave a better impression on you. I'm also very honored that my teachers think that I am successful enough to speak here tonight. I am very fortunate to have a job that I really love doing. Working at NASA has been my dream job since I was a kid. But there is a lot about working in spaceflight that I definitely underestimated. When I was in high school or even college, I didn't fully appreciate just how hard my job would be, or how often I wouldn't know the answer. Compared to my coworkers, I have quite a lot to learn. They are world leaders in what they do. Some of them wrote the textbooks that I studied in college, which is very humbling to be around. And others were consultants for the movie The Martian. I, on the other hand, have only a few years of experience and 0 movie credits to my name. And I have learned far more in the last 4 years than I did in the 4 that I spent in college. And every day, I'm reminded that the best and the fastest way to learn is not through success, but through failure. So when I think about the things that have contributed the most to me being where I am today, I don't typically think of the successes. I usually think of all the failures. And there have been a lot in the 8 years since I left Brush. And I hate to say it, but there will be a lot for you too. You won't always get it right, but how you respond to failure makes all of the difference. I vividly remember my senior year sitting in Mr. Forg's Calc BC class and taking the first exam of the year. I knew how to solve the first problem, but I was not very sure on the second. So I moved on to the third. And I didn't know how to do that one either. So I just kept going, and my heart sank as I flipped through that test because I had no clue how to do any of it. It was maybe the only test in high school where I felt 100% clueless. So I suffered my way through it. I went home feeling pretty defeated. And when I got my test back, there was a big letter C at the top of the page. And that was a big problem because I didn't get C's. I got A's. I wanted to study aerospace engineering in college. How was I going to do that if I couldn't even get a good grade on a high school calculus test? And when I eventually did get to Case to study aerospace, things didn't really get any better. One of the first things my professors told me is that half of everyone who starts as an engineer at Case does not finish as one. The program carries a 50% attrition rate. At times, it felt like certain professors did their very best to contribute to that statistic more so than others. As someone who was used to academic success in high school, my first few semesters in college were a rude awakening. I quickly began submitting incomplete homeworks and exams, sometimes because I ran out of time, others because no amount of time would have been enough for me to finish. The only consolation I had was that all of my friends were struggling just as much as I was. In grad school, the first class I took was fluid mechanics. We learned the math behind everything from how water flows through pipes to how shock waves form around aircraft. In the real world, engineers solve these kinds of problems with computer simulations. But in class, we solved them by hand. And it felt impossibly difficult. One of my homeworks took 2 full weeks and 12 pages of notebook paper to solve a single equation. And I didn't even get it right. And the midterm was the hardest exam I have ever taken in my life. That test was easily the worst 2.5 hours of my academic career. I got a 55% on that midterm, and I thought to myself, maybe I'm just not cut out for grad school. I still had 5 more classes to take and a thesis to write, and I wasn't off to a very good start. My professional career has not escaped unscathed either. One of my first projects was a science experiment that flew on board the International Space Station. I helped a professor from Cornell University design an experiment to study the surface tension of water in 0 gravity. We spent a year and a half and $400,000 building this experiment and launching it to the ISS. The key to the whole thing was a very expensive high-speed camera that we had purchased special from Germany. When our astronaut on the space station turned the camera on, it didn't work. We had gotten unlucky. A stray gamma ray, either from the sun or somewhere else in space, had passed right through the walls of the space station and hit our camera, frying the electronics. All that money and time quickly went down the drain because our camera was stored in the wrong place at the wrong time. I could go on for hours about all the things that have gone wrong in the last 8 years, but I would end up feeling pretty bad at the end of it. And like I said earlier, how you respond to failure makes all of the difference. I got a C on that calculus exam, so I studied. When I got that exam back, I learned what I had done wrong, and I made sure I knew how to do those problems correctly. I got a 4 on the calculus AP test, and I went on to take far more math classes in college than I ever wanted to. I was one of the 50% who did get an engineering degree at Case, and I earned my master's degree too. The foundation I received here at Brush gave me the tools to succeed in college, and by the time I graduated from Case, I was well prepared to start my career. At my first job, I worked on 6 different projects. 2 were successful, 3 were eventually canceled, and then there was the dead camera. No one likes to see their hard work end in cancellation or failure. I'd rather take failure than cancellation, because at least we got to finish. But during those 2 years, I learned quite a lot about spaceflight, and all of that experience has been incredibly valuable. Our interns always like to ask, what is something you wish you knew sooner? I always say that I wish someone had told me that it's okay to fail, because I figured that out far too late. I was always someone who felt like the world was ending when I got a bad grade, or when I had a bad race on the swim team, or struck out in baseball. It took me until my senior year of college to figure out that failing doesn't make you a failure. That calculus exam didn't matter in the long run, and neither did any of the many tests I did poorly on in college. What did matter is that I learned from my mistakes, and I became a stronger student for it. Now, when I find errors in my work, I don't beat myself up for making a mistake. I take the opportunity to learn what I did wrong. At NASA, we embrace our failures. We see them as a chance to become smarter, better engineers. In the Artemis program, we will be returning human beings to the moon for the first time in 60 years. But unlike the Apollo missions, we are building the foundations for a long-term human exploration of space. We will fly state-of-the-art spacecraft, build a space station in lunar orbit, and put a moon base on the surface. We're doing things that have never been done before, and we're going to get some things wrong. But that is one of the central goals of Artemis. We're going back to the moon so that one day, in the next 2 decades, we can go on to Mars. To do that, we need to learn how to live and work beyond the safety of the Earth. We need to learn what new technologies will work and which ones won't. And that will take trial and error. I work on the mission design team for Gateway, a space station that will be put in orbit around the moon in 2025. Gateway will serve as a base camp for astronauts to use as they explore the lunar surface, housing supplies, fuel, and equipment such as landers and rovers. Gateway will fly in an extremely complex orbit, balancing between the gravities of the Earth and the moon. My team designs these orbital trajectories, calculating the precise path through space that will take Gateway from the Earth out to its destination. We account for every aspect of the mission in our trajectory, from the positions of the planets to the performance of our engines. We even account for the force that sunlight will exert on our spacecraft. A particle of light might seem harmless to us on the ground, but over time, sunlight can push a spacecraft hundreds of miles off course. And if we're off by more than a few feet in any direction, we will completely miss our target. A few seconds too late, a little too fast, or a little too slow, and we will lose our delicate balance between the Earth and the moon. The slightest mistake could send our spacecraft sailing off into space or put us on a collision course with the lunar surface. And we must hit this target after flying more than 250,000 miles out from the Earth. Our trajectory is like shooting an arrow from New York and hitting a bullseye in Los Angeles. We need to be confident that our mission will be successful before we launch, but we can't go find the answer in a textbook. There is no solution manual to tell us if our calculations are correct. We're facing problems that no one have ever solved before. We won't know for sure if our work is good enough until Gateway arrives at the moon. Until then, all we have is a guess. We try to refine that guess every day, and we're constantly finding things we could do better. Just in the last 2.5 years, we have gone through 4 iterations of our trajectory, and we're currently building the 5th. Each one has been more complex than the last, incorporating the newest and most accurate data from across NASA. With each iteration, we refine our calculations more and more, and we often uncover errors in our previous designs. Sometimes we discover that entire models just aren't good enough and need to be rebuilt. One in particular I have rewritten on 4 occasions, each time throwing away thousands of lines of computer code and starting over from scratch. Throwing away months of work is painful, and discovering inaccurate calculations can be disheartening. But with every uncovered error, we learn, and we inch that much closer to making our mission successful. In November, a microwave-sized satellite called Capstone will be the first mission to fly in Gateway's eventual orbit. Capstone is going to test our models and tell us what we got wrong and what we got right. It will tell us if our orbit is as stable as the math says it should be, if the algorithms we've written to control our spacecraft are sufficient or not. This will be the most valuable learning opportunity our team will get before it's our turn to go to space, but we still won't have all the answers. There are things we just won't know until we fly. Artemis 1 is a very current reminder of that. This is the first test flight of our new rocket and capsule, both critical parts of our lunar program. You may have seen the launch attempts in the news. They have not gone well so far. The first was scrubbed due to a faulty sensor, and the second attempt was scrubbed due to a fuel leak. And after those problems were fixed, Hurricane Ian has forced NASA to delay the launch until at least early November. Rocket science, it turns out, can be pretty hard. Going to space is difficult, and like any challenge, it comes with its fair share of setbacks. My team and I will walk that same road when we launch. Despite our years of work, there will be things that we still get wrong. Everything that we learn during our mission, good or bad, will increase the chances of success for the missions that come after us. That is the core legacy of NASA. We learn from those who came before. Every mission stands on the shoulders of the previous mission's failures. We succeed because of our mistakes and not in spite of them. Because of my mistakes, I am a better engineer today than I was yesterday. I know the right way to do calculus because I discovered the wrong way here at Brush. And I know how to design a mission to space because I have spent the last 2.5 years learning ways to do it poorly. In the movie Apollo 13, Ed Harris famously says the line, failure is not an option. His character, Gene Kranz, is a legendary NASA flight director who ran mission control for over a dozen missions from Mercury to the space shuttle. And Gene never said those words. He knew better. He knew that failure has been NASA's most valuable tool over the last 60 years, and it certainly has been my most effective teacher. So in 8 years, you may remember nothing about tonight. Like me, you might not remember who spoke at your induction. But I want you to at least remember this. It is okay to fail. It's okay if your GPA isn't perfect. Mine certainly was not. It's okay to have a bad performance or a bad game or to scrub launch attempts. Remember that every stumble can teach you something. Every mistake you make is one less you will make in the future. I have no doubt that all of you will continue to be successful here at Brush, in college, and on into your professional lives. I also have no doubt that you will make plenty of mistakes along the way. You won't always be a good scholar or have time for service. You won't always be a good leader to your peers. And some days you'll be less proud of your character than others. But choose to see all of these times as opportunities to grow and not as setbacks to dwell on. And once again, congratulations on your induction into the National Honor Society. Thank you.
Inductees, please stand and recite the pledge with me. I pledge myself to uphold the high purpose of the National Honor Society, to which I have been selected to build strong character in myself and others, to advance scholarship, to provide leadership, and to serve my school, my community, and my country in the interest of humanity. We will now introduce the inductees and present each with a pin. Carlos Blake. Carmen Dancy. Meredith Davis Cooper. Angelo Fatica. Gabriel Hale. Octavia Holland. Kyla McCall. Sujan Rai. And Mateus Tolentino. I'd like to thank our principal, Mr. Fording, guest speaker, Mr. Karn, and advisors, Mrs. Bram and Mrs. Stranek, for the hard work in organizing this year's induction ceremony. Special thanks goes to Mr. Zachariah and his AV team, who put everything together and ensured it reached all of us at home. Please join me in thanking them with a round of applause. Thank you all for attending the National Honor Society induction ceremony. Please join me once again in congratulating all our new members of the Honor Society, or all of our new Honor Society members. We'd like to take a moment just to recognize two of our returning members. Madison Rediker and Luana Traben. We hope you can join us for Cake and Punch in the Media Center. Please remain seated until the members of the N.H.S. have recessed.